Hi, I'm Dr. Jared Garrison. I'm the Glenn County Health Officer, and I'm meeting today with the Schroers. And first, I'd like to thank you guys for joining and sitting down and talking to me for a few minutes.
Sure.
So I think probably a lot of people are kind of aware that you made that post on Facebook that kind of talking about your family's experience with COVID. And I think it got shared 3.1 thousand times. Do you mind kind of recapping?
Sure.
What was on that Facebook post and?
Yeah. So I kind of just started with a timeline so people could kind of follow when our symptoms started, when our exposure was. So we were exposed actually in our house. We just brought him home from the hospital a week prior. And we were exposed on June 25th. My father-in-law came over to help install flooring in our bathroom. And unknowingly to us, he had a tickle in his throat that he thought was just something that he kind of has some problems with tonsils and always has for most of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't think anything of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that night he went home from our house and got fever, started getting shortness of breath. And on Saturday, the 27th, that's when he went to the ER because he couldn't breathe very well and tested positive for COVID, and then called us and told us. And so they were actually at the races. My son races go-karts when we found out that they were exposed. And so they left immediately and came home. And he had called me earlier in the day and said that he had a little tickle in his throat once he found out that his dad tested positive. And he thought, well, maybe I'm just paranoid. Maybe I'm just, kind of nervous. But the tickle kind of continued Saturday and Sunday. And then on Monday, he got a fever and started getting a cough, kind of a dry cough. Not even a cough that you would necessarily want to even go to the doctor for because there was no phlegm to it. It was just kind of a dry, non-productive cough, I guess you would call it. And so as soon as he got the fever, he went to the ER because we pretty much knew that he was probably going to test positive, which he did. And that was on Monday, the 29th of June. And so the ER doctor had told him that since we'd all been exposed, but he's the only one that had symptoms, to try and keep the rest of us healthy, that he should go live in our RV for a while to keep us kind of healthy, especially because we have this one that has no immune system really.
Well, I talked to the doctor because the reason I went there is because some places take 6 days to get to town. I'm like, 6 days I'm going to invest 4 more people.
Yeah.
So if I could get away from them, I would. So he said he'd give me the 24-hour test because I had a lot going on.
Yeah.
So that's why we got it pretty quick.
Yeah. He knew the next afternoon. And so he actually continued to live in the trailer for a few nights and left me to take care of the 3 kids after I just had a C-section. And so it was very hard. And then on Wednesday, July 1st, or June 30th, my daughter spiked a fever. No other symptoms besides the fever that night. And of course we were like, okay, she's probably going to test positive. So Adam actually took her to the pediatrician's office and got her swabbed. And we had her results the following day. And she tested positive as well. Since she's only 22 months old, she can't tell us her symptoms, but I would think that she lost her taste. Terrible chews are almost coming. Because she didn't even want to eat sweets. Even if we gave her like a cookie, she didn't want it. So I forgot to tell you all your symptoms. So he lost his taste and his smell. He had the fever for 3 days, cough. But the worst part for him was the body ache.
And headaches.
I
mean, it felt like you were sleeping on nails. No matter what you did.
He couldn't get comfortable.
You normally lay down in the bed and you're like, oh, okay, it's soft, and it was just like laying down on a concrete floor. It didn't feel any different. And you lay on concrete or lay on a pillow, didn't make any difference. It was really weird to me in that aspect of it. Because that's when I kind of knew. And then the taste and smell thing kind of happened later.
Yeah.
I never really felt super terrible. I just felt super fatigued.
Yeah.
And, runny nose. But at night, you try to sleep and you just felt terrible. I mean,
and so when he was out in the trailer, and we're not knowing how severe he's going to get, I'm worried that is he going to quit breathing in the night? Is he going to be short of breath in the night? So I'm checking on him. I'm checking on the kids to make sure they're all breathing because, it's scary. You don't really know with this virus how it's going to affect anybody. So my daughter was the most miserable, probably with the fever for about 5 days, high fever. I would assume she had body ache because she would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. You could just tell that she was not comfortable. She had a little bit of a cough, definitely congestion. And in the time that these two were recovering, and actually the doctors okayed for Adam to come back in the house once Zia showed symptoms and tested positive, but we continued to live separately. They would eat separately from us. They would use a different bathroom. They slept separately. I slept in the recliner. We slept up, and we carried that on for almost 10 days, I think, right?
Until he got it.
Until he got it. So in the time that these two had tested positive and were still having symptoms, my father-in-law ended up going to the hospital twice. The first time he went after he had tested positive, he went, I don't know what day it was. I know what day he went for the ICU, but a couple of days before that. So maybe on July 1st, he went to the hospital because he was a little bit delusional, and they said he was dehydrated, and so they gave him fluids and then sent him home because at that point his oxygen level was still pretty good. And then on July 3rd, he went by ambulance actually to the hospital because he couldn't form sentences. He didn't know anything.
He didn't know
really.
who people was.
He didn't know who his brother was. He was calling him different names. And so we said to my mother-in-law, call the ambulance, get him there. And he wasn't getting enough oxygen to his brain. So he was actually admitted to the ICU on July 3rd. And he stayed in the ICU for almost 2 weeks. No, actually
Almost.
2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
Almost
almost
3
the whole
full
time.
weeks. Yeah. And his battle was definitely the most severe out of everybody's. There was a few nights we didn't know if he was actually going to make it. I mean, he needed 80% oxygen support on the ventilator. He was only on the ventilator, I think, 3 days or 4
3 or 4
days.
days.
To put him back on.
But then there was a threat to have to put him back on once they weaned him off. But once he came off the ventilator, he did not know who he was. He could not form sentences still. He didn't know who we were. And the hard part about it, when your loved one is in the ICU or even in the hospital, you can't go see them. So they're sitting in that room all by themselves, and you don't even see your nurse's face. You know, everyone is a stranger. So luckily, the ICU nurses at Enloe were wonderful, and they did a couple Zoom chats with the family members to see him, to try to get his memory to come back, which ended up did helping. But so then once my father-in-law was in the ICU, my son, on day 13 of isolation or quarantine, he got a fever. Actually, he woke up and he was dizzy, nauseous, had a fever, his eyes hurt, and his body hurt. And so off he went again to the pediatrician. He got tested, and he tested positive on, what day was that? July 8th. So it was we were almost done with quarantine for these two. And then he got it. And let's see, you had a fever for
1 full day.
the first day with his symptoms was the worst for him. I mean, he was miserable. I
Slept most
I
of the day.
slept
never
most of
take
the
a
day.
nap, and
Yeah.
I slept for most of the day.
Yeah, and anytime he would get up or move, he was dizzy and nauseous. But then the next morning he woke up and he actually felt pretty good. And then he would just spike a fever at nighttime, only at night. So he had a fever for 3 days, I think, and then he was pretty good. But in that time, we had to worry about keeping this little guy healthy, keeping myself healthy. So again, when he
Now
tested
it's up.
positive, he went onto their side of the house, and he started eating away from us and sleeping away from us.
And I swear it helped just to stay away because, they never got a fever or anything. So I don't know, if they were just lucky or I think they probably had it because he did get a runny nose and stuffed up. And
I got congested and I had a really bad fever. Headache. And I was fatigued, but I was also just had a baby, taking care of everybody, just had to see. And I did lose a little bit of my taste. But I never got tested because I didn't have a fever, I guess, is what the
and we were
Health
locked
said.
down anyway. So they said,
we're
we're not going anywhere. We're
It
going to
doesn't
stay.
really change what you guys were doing.
No, it didn't.
right.
If they said yes, we still weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
So, we had an X amount of time. We just considered as soon as he got it, they were exposed.
Yeah.
So then we just started over and kept going.
It was definitely the scariest experience I've ever lived, having to worry about my kids, especially the ones that can't talk to me and tell me, are they having shortness of breath? Is he having problems breathing? Any little grunt he would make in the night I just, do we need to go take him to the hospital? I just had myself worked up for 3 weeks, basically. And then you're worried about my father-in-law. And then along with my father-in-law, his brother also ended up in the ICU on the same, or he went to the hospital on July 3rd too, but he stayed out of the ICU for a few days.
But then he ended up there too.
He was in the ICU, and then his wife also ended up in the ICU. They ended up, they didn't need a ventilator, but they were on there's like different steps of oxygen machines, and they were on the full face, which is one step away from the ventilator, basically.
And then their son got sick.
And then their son got it, and my mother-in-law also got it. So we have a lot of family members. I think there was 8 total that all ended up testing positive, and they all had different symptoms. So it's been crazy. It's been hell, honestly. It's been hell. It was a really
I couldn't
nightmare.
go to work because I can't bring anybody over to help.
Yeah.
So I was away from work for a month.
Yeah.
Luckily, the company I work for supported me, and
Yeah.
They had no problem with it. And
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Because once he tested positive, I had nobody to help with the baby. Like if I even needed to go take a shower, just little basic things, or go to the bathroom. So
yeah, because if you put him down, I have to keep these 2 away. He's okay, but then he's not feeling well, so he can't go pick him up or help if he cries or give him his pacifier because you don't want to be touching it. We're bowling pacifiers and
having to try and sanitize it all and keep her away from him and keep everybody. It was
even him, and it's difficult.
It's
you don't realize what it's like until you try to keep your own family away from
each other in your house.
And it was miserable.
It was a nightmare.
It was miserable.
Yeah. It seriously is the toughest thing I've ever been through.
Yeah, it was not fun.
Especially because the timing of it, because we just had a baby.
Right.
Yeah, so the worst case scenario as far as that stress wise, we're not getting any sleep anyways.
Yeah.
He's up all night, and then I don't feel good, and she don't feel good, and he don't feel good. My dad, we're worried about my father.
Yeah.
And he even told me now that he's out and I talked to him, he said, when you've been that close to death, you definitely have a different outlook on life and what's important. And I think that he's definitely taking it more seriously, obviously, because he said he's not even coming home. He didn't want to come home until everything was in place. He wanted quarantine signs on his doors to not come in, just because they're not done because he still has symptoms.
Yeah.
So he has to continue that. And obviously he's worried about us. So if he's worried about us, we're worried about him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So how long was he in the hospital?
He he went in July 3rd and he just came home yesterday. So I think it was almost a month. Yeah. Wow. And he still has a long recovery ahead. He still is on oxygen. He's on oxygen support at home. He has pneumonia, but his pneumonia is getting better. He's still short of breath, but he's far better than he was.
More himself when you talk to him.
And his memory's coming back, but he didn't even realize he was on a ventilator. He didn't realize how he got to the hospital. Yeah, he didn't know we had it. He didn't know that he went by ambulance to the hospital because he was that out of it at that point. Yeah. Yeah. So he definitely, we definitely thought we were going to lose him, and it was awful. Awful. Because these people that are, dying in the hospital with COVID are dying alone without their family members around them.
Yeah, people don't see that. They just know somebody died, but you can't go see them, say goodbye, do anything.
No.
You're locked out.
Yeah.
It's just because it's contagious.
Yeah.
And people don't think it is. And you can think all you want, but when it passes through your whole house, and we were, even when I went out of the trailer to try to avoid it.
Yeah.
But I had been dealing with her for a couple of days before that.
Yeah.
And then he took over for me, dealing with her, and then he got it too. Luckily we tried to stay away from them, and the symptoms were limited, but it was rough.
Out of curiosity, your father-in-law, I'm guessing he's probably pretty weak. Can he walk?
He can walk, but not.
Short bursts. It was when he got off the ventilator, they wanted to get him upright. That was the big thing, to get him upright. And even to sit up in a chair took a toll on him, in the hospital, even now, even moving around now. And they really wanted him to try and lay on his stomach, because I guess that helps with the expansion of your lungs.
Well, they say the backside of your lungs are bigger. So when you lay on your back, like in the hospital, and you get fluid in your lungs, it basically shuts it off. So in the front side of your lungs are smaller. Right. So it's less air you can get. So if you flip over and get that moisture off the back of your lungs, you have more surface area to try to get air, because you're basically suffocating. He's never smoked.
No, he doesn't have
diabetes.
He doesn't have any of the things they say that could make you worse. He doesn't have diabetes.
He's still got it. And my dad's a farmer, He owned a dairy his whole life. From when he was 18, he worked on a dairy. He was in the Navy. He was in the Navy for years. And then he owned his own ranch. And I mean, this guy he's 70-something years old, and he can outdig an 18, 19-year-old kid with a shovel.
So he's
so it's not like he's not in shape.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he'll outwork most kids nowadays. And so people think, oh, I'm tough, I'm strong, or whatever. Because even my friends that I've dealt with, now that they saw what happened to my father, they've straight up told me, you know, I was kind of like, I don't know about this and that. And I said, man, it opened my eyes, because once they seen what it did to my dad, and they all know him, then they realized, you know, it can take anybody and make you rough. It doesn't care who you are. You know what I mean? It doesn't care. So.
Do you guys mind me asking, what was the scariest moment with this whole ordeal for each of you?
Well, honestly, for me, it was when we heard my father-in-law tested positive, and then to have to now wonder how it's going to affect him, who it's going to hit in the family. Are we all going to get it? Are we going to end up in the hospital? You know? So for me, it was worrying about my family at night, especially and worrying about my babies that can't tell me how they feel. So for me, it was just really worrying about these guys in the house and wondering who's going to get it. How's it going to affect them? Are they going to need something to help them breathe? Because that's what my father-in-law ended up with. So I'm worrying about my father-in-law. Obviously, that was the scariest part, because we honestly didn't know if he was going to make it. We didn't know if the last time we saw him at our house was the last time we were going to see him in person. You know? So for me, it was just having to worry about everybody if they're going to make it out of it.
Yeah. Mine was probably when I woke up like 3 times in the night. I was like, oh, my stomach is hurt. I'm sort of dizzy. And then when I woke up, my eyes were hurting, my head was hurting, my whole body was hurting. And I just started to walk around, and I was like, ooh. And definitely when I heard that my grandpa got on the ventilator.
Yeah. Right.
Definitely my father.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I was concerned with my family, but we were kind of in the motion of dealing with that. And then when you get called, you know, and I can't talk to him. Right. So we just have to call a caseworker or, you know, a nurse. And they said, well, he's not good. And we put him on as soon as I heard ventilator, you know, and I know that's not good.
We felt doomy and gloomy at that point.
And then it was every day you call. So it was not one moment for me.
You dial
it was
a number
days.
and you get the nurse and you're like, what are they going to tell me today? How did the night go? You know, did he make it through the night? You know, that was awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
I mean, when he's been the strongest part of your life, you know, your dad, anybody's dad is, you know, the guy you look up to.
Yeah.
So when he's out, you know, down and you can't see him or talk to him, or, you know, it's like one thing if somebody's sick, you know, you can go talk to them and see him and see their face and check on him, but it's just a phone call.
And then you sit there and think that he's just there alone, not knowing anybody.
Yeah,
you know?
It's definitely the worst for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you guys for sharing that.
Yeah.
So let me ask, you know, I hear a lot of people say that this isn't real, or this is a hoax, or that it's going to go away after the election. What would you guys say to that?
Well, it didn't care the election or anybody.
It didn't care if we were Democrat or Republican or very liberal, or it has nothing to do. I mean, honestly, like, I think my father-in-law was probably one of those that didn't take it quite as seriously. Not that he wasn't ever concerned. My mother-in-law would wear masks, but he wouldn't always wear his mask. And I think that he was more on the, you know, everyone's going to be fine. You know, we're going to be fine. And it hit him the hardest, you know, so it doesn't discriminate on how you feel about it. It's if you're exposed to it, you're going to get sick.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that way, you know, because of, you know, let's talk about political and whatnot. I mean, it seems that way because of the timing of it, you know, and it's easy to always sway something the way you want it to go. You know, you can always look at anything and say, well, it happened because of this, or it's going that way. But once you live through it, you know, my dad.
Well, it's easy to downplay it when you haven't lived through it. You know, a lot of people just think it's not going to happen to them. It's just on the news. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely not political.
No.
I mean, why would it get? She doesn't care who you're voting for. She has no idea.
He doesn't either.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. It's just, like I said before, you know, everybody thinks the mask is like the new normal. I just think it's what we need to do to get through it.
It's just temporary. That's my biggest thing is these people that don't want to wear masks.
I mean,
and they're so against it.
Orland Hardware today, get parts. So it says right on the door. That's another thing that bothers me. It says on the door, wear your mask.
And people going without a mask on.
I went in there, nobody had their mask on, you know, and I'm walking around and they look at you like you're crazy, you know, and I'm like, well, you haven't lived what I lived through, you know, I'm actually protecting you and protecting myself. But if you're out just willing to, you know, and that's what they don't understand. If you don't have it, or I mean, you say you're asymptomatic and you have it, he's infecting everybody in the store, and you know, it's just
Well, that's the
for
biggest
what?
thing. That's the biggest thing too. Is
To make it longer, we're gonna have it longer.
Yeah.
The more you spread it, the longer it's gonna be, or the longer you're gonna have to wear the mask.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody just put it on and go in the store, get your stuff, go out and get in your car, take it off. What is the big deal?
Yeah,
I mean, a surgeon never goes in and operates on you without one. I
Yeah.
was thinking about that today. You know, we had babies, you know, 10 years ago, 2 years ago. We all wore masks in there. There was no COVID.
Yeah.
Why were we all wearing masks? To protect each other,
Yeah.
you know, because she's opened up and there's germs. You know what I mean? So if it didn't work, why would they have been wearing them for the last 50 years, you know, in the surgery room? It's the same concept. You know what I mean? It's just to protect everybody. It wasn't because it was the election's coming. You know, it's because she was open up to have him and, you know, all C-section.
Yeah.
Oh, it's surgery. How long have doctors been wearing masks in surgery?
Right.
As long as I can remember.
Yeah, since about 1960.
Yeah, so I mean,
Well, and people are just so like they're taking away our rights by making us wear masks. It's not going to be a forever thing. It's a temporary thing. If we all just put them on and wear them when you're in public, if you don't have to wear them when you're at your house, you don't have to wear them when you're in your car.
yeah, I don't mow my lawn with one on.
Yeah,
You know, I
but
just-
when you're out, we're wearing masks to protect everyone's family members, not just ours. Everybody's.
yeah,
you
I
know?
don't want to get somebody else's father in the hospital.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's why as soon as I found out it, I went straight home.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't have any symptoms. I just wanted to get out of there, you know, to protect everybody else.
Yeah.
Wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about these guys and everybody around me. You know what I mean? So,
Any advice you give to people who might be watching or listening?
Well, my number one thought is one, you know, people think that it's an allergy or it's just a cold. And there's a lot of people that test positive for COVID that just have cold symptoms. So I think the biggest thing is people just carry on with their life and go to work and they go to the grocery store or wherever and they think it's a cold and it's not. And then also it's the people that are asymptomatic that have no idea they have it. And maybe they go to, I don't know, they go get tested and they test positive and they've gone everywhere, you know? So again, it's just all this staying at home and not going places and not having parties is temporary. So just do your best to just stay home and abide the guidelines, abide by them, you know? It can save everybody's lives, honestly. I mean, I don't know.
well, I think if let's just say my family, for example, if we were able to just not go anywhere, my father didn't go anywhere, or none of us would have got it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you're going to go out in the public, you're exposing yourself, you know, and that's what happened to him. He's, you know, got exposed by somebody, and he doesn't know where it came from. You know, we can kind of nail it down because we never went anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just, and like he said to me as well, my throat's been bothering me since I was in the Navy, you know, 50 years ago or whatever, because he had trouble with his tonsils, and that's what he thought it was, you know, but if he would have just stayed home,
Our COVID exposure would have been avoided.
yeah.
Not theirs, but ours would have been.
So, yeah, just I feel if you don't feel good, you know, it's, you know, I would be guilty of it years ago. Had the flu, I'd go to work,
Yeah.
you know, because that's just what you did. Because,
It's
and I
just
tell
for
everybody,
this
hey, I feel
time.
terrible.
It's just for right now. It's not for forever. It's
Yes.
just right now. You have to be very mindful of your body, your symptoms, wearing a mask, and keeping your distance from people. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Wash your hands,
Yeah.
wear a mask when you go into a store and get your stuff, and
Stay 6 feet apart.
Stay 6 feet apart.